Good morning to everyone watching. We are live this morning, episode 236 of the Treaty Talk podcast. Myself, Jack Neville, and Matt O'Callaghan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star will be joined very shortly by Clare's Eoin Brennan as we look forward to the Munster Senior Hurling final this weekend. It promised to be a cracker, so stay tuned for a lot of talk about hurling over the next hour or so as all rivals renew acquaintances this Sunday in the Gaelic Grounds.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the war court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
A warm welcome to Eoin Brennan, who joins us for the second time in about 6 weeks on. Hopefully, a good podcast, but a different result this time around.
Well, the only reason I came back is because the omens were good for maybe a Clare victory again. So I won't break with tradition.
Yeah, look, it was a brilliant podcast last time around. So we will be talking an awful lot of hurling over the course of the next hour or so. Anyone watching live, make sure to get your comments in or questions as we look forward to a titanic battle this Sunday in the TUS Gaelic Grounds. And a special thank you to Noel's Menswear, our sponsor. But before we get into the game itself, have to touch on the sad passing of Teddy McCarthy yesterday evening. Cork legend, a double All-Ireland winner in 1990. I don't know what the likes of it ever be done again. And Matt, you obviously followed that career and will go down as a legend in Cork and in the country overall.
Jack, yeah, first of all, I suppose our deepest sympathy to the McCarthy family, and I suppose to Cork GA and the GA world in general. It has lost a very, very special, individual, and in 1990, I suppose he etched his name in the annals of GA history forever, like in the space of 2 weeks, won 2 senior medals with Cork. By any benchmark, Teddy McCarthy's career was a glittering career that ended up with him winning 4 All-Ireland medals, 2 in hurling and 2 in football, 9 Munster medals, 6 in football, 3 in hurling, and Footballer of the Year in 1989, 1 All-Star. It doesn't come much better. But I suppose the one thing that would stand out for me, absolutely, there was no doubt about his prowess in both codes. But I suppose, you'll probably remember on as well, he was noted for his high fielding in both codes. Which at most times was absolutely spectacular. It was off the charts at times, and time and again it broke the heart of opposition, of opponents, both in hurling and football. And Teddy McCarthy was a great sportsman. Very, very, very rarely did he come on the wrong side of the playing rules or anything like that. And it was, I suppose, a very, very humble man that shunned the limelight in what he had achieved, because what Teddy McCarthy had achieved was absolutely unique. To be taken from us at the age of 57 is also so sad to his wife and to his family and to the GA fraternity, and just his son Cian, as Eoin will remember, lined out at centre half forward for Cork in the 2013 All-Ireland final replay, and it's a very, very sad day, and it's something that is a bit of a cloud in what is the best, what normally is the best week in hurling in this province, Munster final week. I think everything for the rest of the week will be tempered, and we won't be able to forget the sad passing of Teddy McCarthy.
Go on.
Yeah, look, I echo that. I mean, he was probably one of those iconic players in the game, if you know what I mean. That I was at a game last night when the news broke, and everyone was mentioning him. I mean, look, people pass away all the time in terms of GAA and their experience and all that, but he's one of those that everyone, I think, reflected on last night. And it's just one of those kind of legends of the game and the iconic. And as I was going to mention it myself, the old salmon-like leap in the air is like he was like the Irish version of Michael Jordan, I suppose, in some ways, that he was able to get an extra jump when he was jumping. And I just think it's obviously so sad because he was such a young man still, and obviously heartbreaking to his family and all that. But one of the game's greats, and I don't think we'll ever see his like again in terms of being equally adept at hurling football, and just so. I mean, to get 9 Munster titles, I think 6 in football and 3 in hurling, and sharing 4 All-Ireland medals. We'll never see his like again.
Yeah, I don't think we will. Look, I like how the two lads' sentiments there. Condolences to the McCarthy family and the GA family in Cork. But it's lovely to see on Twitter and social media all the great images and videos of Teddy in his prime. And as you mentioned, it's the leap into the air that really stands out. So big condolences there to the family. Obviously, it's a huge weekend in the GA calendar. The Munster Championship has caught the imagination of everyone, football, hurling, everyone in Ireland, and it does every year. But this year has been really special, you know, and the narrative coming into the final, it writes itself. Limerick looking for 5 in a row, Clare looking for a first in 25 years. It's on in Limerick, you know. There's so much going to the game. On the venue, were you surprised at the fact it was on in Limerick, and does it really matter at the end of the day?
I think first and foremost, it should be in Thurles. You know what I mean? The decision should never have come down to a county having to say, "Look, we'll play it in your backyard," kind of a thing. If this was a league game or something like that, you'd say, okay, maybe. But I mean, the fact that it's not in Thurles, you know, is a bit of a surprise. I don't know how. I'd love to know the actual narrative behind all this, as in to say, surely Limerick weren't looking for Cork either. I mean, I can't believe it. I've never seen a Limerick team wanting to play in Cork before. But anyway, it could be a double bluff. It might be. But anyway, in terms of just sheer logistics, I think from a Clare perspective, for players, management, supporters, I think it was the best call that they could have made at the time, rather than the Cork one. If Thurles wasn't on the table, as we believe it wasn't, then Limerick isn't in a bad place to go in terms of.
Do we lose on the choice of going live there? Matt, I'll throw it over to you there while we're waiting for phone to come back. On the venue, what did you make of the whole scenario?
Yeah, I think it was a strange one, and obviously Limerick, you know, John Kiley, you know, didn't seem to mind whether it was Cork or Thurles when that question was put to him after the Cork game. But obviously Limerick decided that they would nominate Cork. Personally, I have nothing whatsoever against Cork, but you know, the logistics of getting to Cork and the whole parking issue, and you know, it's the hell of a journey from North and West Clare to Cork, as indeed it is from West Limerick and some parts of East Limerick. But it's easy for me to speak like who just joined the motorway at Mitchelstown and fly up there. But yeah, I think it was an unusual call by Clare, and like Eoin said, that he would like to know the narrative about it. I certainly would like to know the mechanics as to how this decision was arrived at, and it's an unusual decision, and like it has previous though, because they did meet in the Munster final, and Eoin is laughing there now. They did meet in the Munster final in Limerick in 1955, which was the famous Mackey Greyhounds final, and So I suppose, it's not unique and such, but to me, the whole thing is a bit strange. It's a Munster final. Like, we had the setting in Thurles last year, and we saw what we got last year.
Yeah, I'd agree with Owen's point that Munster final should be in Thurles, unless it's Limerick and Tip, and then you just play every second year. But you were getting into your point there, Owen. But for Clare, it's still a home game for Limerick, but it's not too long ago since they went to the Gaelic Grounds and won there, and their most recent encounter was a Clare win. So they won't have any fear going to the Gaelic Grounds.
Yeah, sorry, I was nobbled there. I don't know, it was the Clare County Board or Brian Lohan trying to silence me there, but I got cut off in the middle of it there. But yeah, look, I think they're so used to playing in the Gaelic Grounds. I mean, anyone we would play of a neutral venue would normally play them in the Gaelic Grounds anyway, whether that's Tipperary or even Cork or whatever. So Clare won't have any fear going to the Gaelic Grounds. Obviously, Limerick will be much more familiar with it than Clare would be. But I think it's a brave call in that. If it works, it's a masterstroke. If it doesn't, it can be like, the problem with it is that there's been so wafer thin margins between the two teams in the last 2 years that you'd say it's a very borderline call whether that could be the vital point or error, familiarity with the corner, a little bit of, and it could come down to a mistake or a moment of genius. So obviously Limerick have been a little bit more familiar with it, but also I think puts pressure on Limerick a little bit more in that obviously they're going for 5 in a row, but the pressure will be on them that they are at home. They have to perform, and you imagine that they will have more supporters than Clare would. Definitely if you add in the stewards and stuff like that. So, you know what I mean? It's a little bit more pressure on Limerick as well. It's an unusual scenario for someone to opt to go to your home venue. It's a really unusual call. I'd like to. We'll only know Sunday evening, obviously, how it works out, but it's very, very intriguing.
Yeah, there seems to be bluffing from both sides, but I think logistically, the Gaelic Grounds is closer to a lot of Clare people than it would be to me out here in West Limerick, as Matt alluded to. And I think Cork didn't really make much sense. As I said, Thurles probably was the venue. But you talk about pressure there, pressure on Limerick at their home venue going 5 in a row. But is there a pressure on this Clare team to finally deliver? It's been a long time since he won a Munster. Obviously, the All-Ireland success in 2013 will paper over that a large part. But, they got the final last year, gave a really good account of themselves. But there must be a feeling now that this is the time to deliver.
Definitely, and for Brian Lohan and his own team, like he even said it this week, that Limerick have won all the trophies at the end of the day, and while Clare have come close and they've beaten them in the group stages, they had no silverware from their 3 or 4 years, and it's now 3 full years or 4 years. It's the 4th year of Brian Lohan's in charge, so made a lot of strides. But it's only when you get that kind of tangible silverware, that bit of validation, and we saw that actually from the Clare minor hurlers even this year as well, that they won a Munster after losing on penalties the previous year, and just that relief to get some silverware is a kind of a justification, a validation that you're going in the right direction. Obviously, to make strides is brilliant, to come close to Limerick, but who's going to remember that in 20 years' time when the next Jack Neville is doing his podcast? You know what I mean? And the next Matt O'Callaghan and the next Eoin Brennan are sitting down there. Will any be referencing it? Clare came close, but really until you win and until you win trophies, and obviously it's a derby as well, that added kind of bragging rights. There's a lot of Clare people working with Limerick and so on and so forth, and marriages and all that kind of thing. So it means a lot, but in a final, it's all about winning. It has to be, no matter who you're playing.
100%. Matt, the pressure, is it greater on Limerick or on Clare, do you think, coming into the game?
Well, the suspicious part of me thinks maybe that Clare opted for Limerick to exert extra pressure on Limerick. But I'm just wondering there about Clare's preparation. They've had a 3-week run into the final, and I can't help but thinking that for the first week of that, they were probably focused, and the mindset was on facing Tipperary, until Waterford came in and put the cat among the pigeons. So they probably lost a week. And I probably, on the balance of probability, that the last team that Clare would have been expecting the week after they beat Cork to face in the Munster final would probably be Limerick. Because certainly after Limerick's draw with Tipperary and Clare's win over Cork going into the Cork game, Limerick's chances of retaining that Munster title were hanging by a thread. And you know, the interesting part about it is, and it's a microcosm of how close this whole Munster championship is, that had Cork got an equalising point, Clare would be facing Cork and Tipperary would be out of the championship. Like,
Yeah.
That's, you know, Owen spoke about fine margins. They don't come any finer than that. Pressure on Limerick in the final, the nub of your question. There's always pressure in a Munster final, no matter what. And this final, of course, cannot be but benchmarked against last year's great final, which was arguably, certainly, and I've seen many Munster finals. I won't say how many now, and stop laughing, Eoin Brennan. But
you're there in 55, no?
No. I was, as Jack would say, I was away that day. But no, I you know, it ranks up there with you see. You tend to judge these great games by the result if it's in your favour, you know. But to stand back in the cold light of day, I suppose, and look at last year's final, it was one of the real great finals. It was a final that had everything, and like the expectation going in on Sunday is absolutely huge. Yes, the home venue will probably bring that extra bit of pressure. Limerick will probably have that extra few spectators, supporters, more than Clare. And, you know, but Limerick have been around the block so often. You know, you're not going for 5 in a row in the Munster Championship without being able to handle those type of situations. And if you cast your mind back to the 2021 Munster final when Limerick were 10 or 12 points down at halftime in Páirc Uí Chaoimh against Tipperary, and the way that they turned it around, that certainly was pressure after the first half, but the way they coped with it, yes, there will be the extra bit of pressure, Jack, but I think Limerick have the wherewithal and the experience to cope with it.
Yeah, I think so. On for yourself as a Clare man, you know, sitting down for them final round of games, feet up, knowing that you were in the final. What was your reaction at the end of, we'll say, the 70 minutes in the Gaelic Grounds and in Thurles, that it wasn't going to be Tip, that it was going to be in Limerick? Was there, you know, apprehension, or was there looking forward to playing Limerick again?
It's funny because you know, by talking to the players the previous week after the Cork game, and there was a lot of a visual atmosphere after.
He's gone.
Clare wanted Clare wanted
go on there again.
Limerick. The players afterwards wanted Limerick. They were disappointed that they were probably going to be playing Tipperary. I suppose it was the fact that you want to beat the best in a final. So I think that in itself maybe kind of joins the narrative of Clare going to the Gaelic. They just feel that they have to beat the best. And I'm not saying that Tipperary aren't up there. I'm just saying that in terms of the rivalry in the last couple of years, I think this is it's the final that everyone wants to see. It's the biggest rivalry in hurling. Let's be honest about it. So I wasn't surprised to see Limerick come through. I was surprised to see Waterford doing so well against Tipperary. I couldn't believe really what was unfolding in that game. But the Limerick Cork game, there was nothing between it. And Matt is right. The Munster Championship, such way for thin margins all the way through. But I think you can't argue with a league basis. You know, whether that comes down to 1 point in scoring difference, it's over your 4 games that you're judged. And I think that's the ultimate test for anybody. So how every point can count, even if you're losing, to only lose by 7 rather than 8 could make all the difference at the end of it. So I think it's a fabulous system. I think the round robin series, since it came in 2017, 2018, has been a revelation really for hurling, and especially in Munster.
Yeah, and you talked before about, you know, needing to win in finals and playing the best teams, and in the round robin, you know, Clare have the best record over the 5 championships they had, but it is about time of delivering, because as you said, no one remember that Clare had the best record in the group stages. They'll remember the Limerick maybe 4 or 5 in a row, or, you know, these sort of things that it is really time that Clare can really lay down a marker here, as well as we were the best team in the group. We're going to be the best team overall, because if they lose, we know that path is a long one, and you saw what happened against Kilkenny last year.
Yeah, definitely, and there's no guarantees, and I think a Munster Championship is much more. They crave it more in Clare than you would in Limerick, and I'm not saying you don't want to go for 5 in a row, but I think Limerick could afford to lose a match and probably still go on to win in All Ireland. I'm just not sure. Clare got the strength and depth to maybe ship a couple of injuries, like we saw last year with John Conlon going out for the semi-final. It was a massive blow, and I don't think Tony Kelly was right for since that Munster final either. So I just think that for Clare, this is their All Ireland final now, and if they win it, great, you have a bonus and you have a bit of a break to the All Ireland semi-final. But losing it, it's a long path again, and I'm not so sure we can negotiate that. So for Clare, everything is on the line on Sunday, and I think it's do or die, and it's probably the way they prefer it.
Yeah, Matt, Paul Brown spoke about it last week, the impact of losing the final, and there's a lot of people that saying the winner of the All Ireland will come from this game. So we talked about fine margins. It is so crucial to get over the line on Sunday.
Yeah. I suppose from a confidence point of view and from a momentum point of view, that there is nothing like going the direct route. But we must remember that Limerick were quite happy and very, very successful in 2018, when Clare turned them over in the final round in Ennis and condemned them to going the third team route, and did it very, very successfully. But that was from the third team. But after losing a final, and losing a final and lose it in the circumstances that Clare lost it last year, and I've no doubt it's going to be as close this year, whichever one will come out on top. It can be very difficult to pick it up. It can be difficult to pick it up, as Clare found out last year to their cost. But it's a whole different dynamic if you're going forward as winners, as distinct from going forward as having lost. And at that stage, were Limerick to lose on Sunday, they would have lost 2 games. But of course, the same could be said for Clare, because they lost to Tipperary in the first round. But I think there's nothing like going the direct route. But Eoin was talking there about the importance of it for Clare and to get silverware, and I couldn't agree more, because it's a bit of a millstone around their neck at this stage. That of the 5 counties in Munster, they're waiting the longest for a Munster Championship, going all the way back to 1998. Waterford have won 3 or 4 in the meantime. Limerick have won 5 in the meantime. Cork, Tipperary. So, from a Clare perspective and from a Clare hurling perspective, this game is absolutely huge. But hurling in Clare, irrespective of the result on Sunday, looking at it from the outside, in my view, is in a very, very good place. In so far as you look at the under-21s, came so close to overturning Cork in the Munster final. Cork that went on to win the All Ireland, and we saw a fantastic performance by their minors. Absolutely tremendous performance. Beating Kilkenny and beating Galway, beating the top sides at minor level. Now, I saw Kilkenny and Galway playing in the Leinster minor final. I thought Galway were an excellent side, and Clare came on and emphatically beat them in a final. So, look, what's coming behind, and it's all momentum behind Clare, and winning can be contagious too. But I would just like to remind Eoin, in case he forgets, that the only team that laid a glove on Clare minors this year was Limerick in the second round.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
You are right. We first half was a disaster for us, and first 20 minutes of the semi-final as well, Limerick were the better team in that minor as well, so they weren't far away from it. I think that team in particular is very good collective in terms of Clare. They 12 different scores in All-Ireland final. I think it was just a phenomenal performance, and that Galway team had been well touted. They were the favourites before a ball was booked, so it's a fantastic achievement. And I'll remind you, Matt, that the last time Clare minors won in All-Ireland was 97, and we won a senior the same year, the same day actually, but we can't do that this year, so maybe there's a good omen in that as well. But in reality, Matt is right about the Munster Championship. I mean, Brian Loam was a player in his peak the last time Clare won a Munster Championship, which is amazing for the amount of teams that we've had and good teams that we've had down the years. And if Clare were to lose on Sunday, you have the likes of Tony Kelly and Shane O'Donnell and all these players, John Conlon, that have played in 4 Munster finals and lost 4 Munster finals in 7 years. So there is a bit of pressure on Clare as well to perform and to win. And I said at the outset that there's pressure on Limerick. They have proven that they're able to handle pressure. It's up to Clare now to prove their way and justify at that first Munster Championship in 25 years.
Yeah, is there a different feeling this year coming into the final on? Because you've a lot of final experience. Obviously, new fellas haven't played much, but coming into last year, is there a different sense around Clare?
I think after last year's final, and Matt talked about what a great game and a game for the ages and all it was, I think after that, while Clare were obviously disappointed to lose in such fine margins and all that kind of thing, I think in hindsight, they were kind of just suggesting that it was fantastic to come that close to Limerick, and it was a kind of a moral victory while not getting their hands on silverware. It was still seen as the catch-up between 2020. I said it before in the podcast before we talked about the last game, that the catch-up that they had from 2020 when it was very one-sided to that final last year, which is just 3 years later, I think they Clare would be so happy that they caught up in such a short time. So this year it's about winning it, really. It was going in with more hope last year. They have to go in and win it this year. It's all on the line for Clare, and I know they've beaten them already, and that came out of necessity as well, because let's be honest, if we didn't beat Limerick that night, we were out of the championship before even the start of May. So it's been a fabulous turnaround for Limerick and for Clare, and I think this one is all about winning for Clare. They have to get over the line by whatever means possible, really.
And Matt, from a Limerick point of view, there's obviously a huge difference. You know, last year coming into the game, probably winning the bones of 15 games in a row. Now, you obviously drew a Clare the previous round, but they've been dealt that hammer blow by Clare. There's probably a bit of caution coming against Clare this time around.
There is, but that can either act one way. You know, it can go either way. That in that it certainly has put Limerick on the alert as to what Clare are all about, and it will be certainly driving Limerick in that they cannot allow themselves to be beaten in the same championship twice by Clare. That arch enemies like that will be a motivating factor and a driving factor in it. But from a Limerick perspective, Jack, and having seen the 4 games and been at the 4 games, and just like yourself, there has been measurable improvement in the Limerick team. From a very, very flat performance against Waterford, an improved performance against Clare, and certainly it has gone up a couple of notches since. Then you had a period, we'll say, for the last 2 games against Tipperary and Cork of adjusting to life without Sean Finn. That seems to have settled down now, I think it will be a much better equipped Limerick team that Clare will face on Sunday than that which it faced in the second round.
Yeah, they're obviously flying this time around. Is there learnings from obviously that game last year, the drawn final or the drawn final that Limerick eventually won, and the win that Clare got over Limerick just a couple of weeks ago on, or is it just more the same?
Oh, I think they did learn. I mean, poke-out wise, there was a big change in that they really they were really aggressive in the group stage up from the poke-out this year, and I think that it paid dividends in a good few of the scores that Clare got. So I think definitely they learned from that in the final. I think last year the most obvious thing was once it went to extra time, I, along with a few others, knew we weren't going to win it in extra time. We just didn't have maybe the backup in terms of strength and depth that Limerick had, and only so long that guys can last, especially in such intensity that game was. And I think that's what took most out of Clare after that. I think there was such a physical demand in that day, the intensity and all that. I don't think they ever recovered from that. And that sounds strange because they're such elite athletes, but I think the physical toll was quite noticeable on that. In the group stage this year, Clare, I think it just came out of necessity as well, that because they had to win, they were so ravenous, so hungry for it, that they were willing to get over the line by whatever means. And maybe Limerick kind of subconsciously even fed into that, in terms of they saw what Tipperary did to them and maybe thought that Clare wouldn't be the same as they were last year. And look, they won't fall into that trap again, that's for certain, on Sunday. But it certainly gave Clare a lift, because I think the aggression came out of sheer necessity, and I think that's the most fundamental ingredient that was evident on that day. And I think if you look at it, Clare were probably 4 or 5 points better. The late Seamus Flanagan goal, I think, brought it back to a point, but I think
Yeah, I'll just jump in there ahead of you. Matt, I do agree with that point that the goal did mask the overall result, but the Limerick team that played Clare to the Limerick team that played Cork in the final round were chalk and cheese, I think it's fair to say. And Limerick do seem to be hitting a vein of form akin to the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, absolutely. That was the point that I was making earlier. But I would like to revert back to something that Eoin said there a while ago, and he was speaking about what learnings Clare had taken from last year and what was changed from last year. There's one thing that's very obvious to me in Clare, and in what would say, for instance, the return of Aidan McCarthy has been huge in that it has given them in incredible depth up front, and plus the fact that he's providing a twin threat now in terms of scoring with Tony Kelly. But I was just looking at what the Clare, and you have the return of Peter Duggan, but what I'm looking at is the Clare bench, and Eoin saying that in extra time last year they didn't have the wherewithal, to go on and win it. But like, if you look at the Clare bench this year, like when you see players like Aaron Shanager, Shane Meehan, Ian Galvin, all these lads, Paul Flanagan, all these guys in reserve, they're very, very strong players, and probably would be first team players in most counties. So in terms of strength and depth, I think Clare have rectified it.
Yeah, I think strength and depth is a huge thing amongst both panels. For Limerick, again, from the last day, the likes of Claude Hegarty had a big game that he had been quieter during the year. Darren Burns was phenomenal again. That the overall performance was improved, but there was individuals that kind of came to the fore, and Kyle had a big second half as well. That if these lads get going for Limerick, it's very hard to see anyone stop them, Matt.
Yeah, you would say that, but I think that to beat Clare on Sunday, the Limerick will have to reproduce the performance that they showed against Cork and a little more, because Clare will have improved as well from the second round. Now they had a very, very comfortable win over Waterford, but I thought Clare showed new resilience in the win over Cork. The way they dug it out at the death and closed it out at the death. Yes, Limerick will have improved. So will Clare have improved, and it's a question of which one of the two has improved the most. Now, I think a very, very important factor is is it a probability on that Conor Cleary will be missing?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest concern for Clare. I suppose is the fact that Conor Cleary, he dislocated his shoulder against Cork. Look, it's a race against time, but a shoulder is dodgy. Like, there's no guarantee he's going to come back. And even if he was to start, there's no guarantee it's going to hold up 70 minutes, and he has been, he's been an ever-present, obviously, fullback for the last couple of years and made the position his own, but also he's been the one man that is able to go toe-to-toe with Aaron Gillane, and they've had some tussles. A lot of the time, they'd neither of them have a hurley in their hands, or both of them have their hurley and other hands and other hurleys, but it's been quite a tussle between the two of them. So if Conor Cleary was to be missing no more than John Conlon last year, it would be a big hole in the Clare defence, and it's difficult to see what Clare would do in that regard. You talked about Aidan McCarthy coming back. Shane O'Morey was a big return in terms of the backs this year, but he probably, isn't that kind of a man marker that and physically be able to stand up to Aaron Gillane. So Adam Hogan went in full back against Patrick Horgan, did a good job, but he's a very young guy. He's only just out of his teenage years, so it's a lot of pressure on his shoulders to mark such a potent forward as Aaron Gillane. So a lot of questions to be asked. I suppose the fundamental one really is Conor Cleary going to be right or not? 3 weeks with a dislocated his shoulder. I'm sure Aaron if you feel.
Yeah, it's an intriguing battle and one that's very enjoyable to watch from the terrace, as I saw it last year firsthand in Thurles. Owen, a question here from Michael Heal, and everyone keep getting your questions in. How does Owen feel about the ref, and will he be watching for diving? Now, I don't know, is that aimed at Clare or is it aimed at Limerick? But the referee in general, Liam Gordon, will, you'll be hoping that the game is let flow like it was last year, because it really added to the spectacle.
Yeah, but if you look at what happened last year and subsequently to that, like John Keenan was vilified by the hierarchy. He never got a game until this year. Wasn't even a linesman on things. So
it's broke down there, Matt. I'll give it to you for a second. The refereeing, you won't envy the man in the middle this Sunday.
No, because it's going to be a cauldron in the Gaelic grounds, and I think Liam Gordon refereed one of Limerick's earlier games in the competition, and I don't think he found favour with the Limerick supporters. But the referee is always wrong. Particularly for the losing side, but it's going to be a cauldron in there. There's going to be 45,000 odd people in there, and making the decisions in the split seconds that referee has to do it. I certainly don't envy him, but the refereeing of the game will be very, very important. But in answer to his question, is he referring to Clare diving? Because I certainly don't remember Limerick diving that much anyway. So I just can't answer it, to be honest.
No, Owen is back in, and I have another question here from Matt. So go on.
The only diving that Clare do is in the Hinch or Spanish Point.
Yeah, I was in the Hinch the weekend looking out for any of the Clare players, but they weren't getting their practicing in. Matt, a question here from Hurling.
We've been on you into air for that one.
On YouTube, Limerick are lucky decisions went their way against Cork with the penalty and the throw by Will O'Donoghue for the O'Neill goal. You need that look to get over tight games. First of all, I don't think it was a throw by Will. I think Limerick have kind of mastered that hand pass, but there was a couple of decisions that kind of went Limerick's way, but you earn your look in these occasions. I don't think the game was won and lost on that.
No, I disagree on both counts. I don't think Will O'Donoghue threw the ball, and I'm not looking through green-tinted glasses now or anything like that. Nor do I think. I think it was definitely a penalty. I had a bird's eye view of it. I hadn't much doubt of it. Maybe they got entangled, but that was after the foul. So
yeah, I was behind as well.
And what was your take on it, Jack?
In the real time, I thought it was 100% a foul, but maybe I'm conditioned to seeing Aaron Gillane being pulled and dragged around the place in every game. He gets a very special treatment from a lot of players, so maybe that was it. But I definitely thought it was a foul. On the Conor Cleary thing, if you were in the Clare's shoes, would you throw someone like Adam Hogan into the deep end like that, or would you be trusting the likes of Paul Flanagan or Rory Hayes to pick up Aaron, who's, and And to be fair to Aaron, he
I
has been brilliant, but Seamus Flanagan has probably been the best inside man for Limerick this year.
I think if I were confronted with the decision, I'd go with David McInerney at full back.
Okay,
And
shuffle around.
but then I'd be saying to myself, how are you going to cope with 𝘕𝘠 Hegarty? So you'll be starting robbing Peter to pay Paul, and possibly Shane O'Morey coming in, and as Owen mentioned there's a possibility of Aidan McCarthy coming back. I think he started his career as a wing back actually.
Yeah, he
and
did.
Made the transition to the attack. So there are options for Brian Lohan, but there's no question at all about it. Like we lamenting the loss of Sean Finn, Clare are equally entitled to lament the loss of Conor Cleary. He's been an ever-present there on the edge of the square for the last couple of years, and has grown into being a very, very formidable fullback. And of course, we know the record that's between himself and Aaron Gillane, and he certainly makes life difficult for Aaron Gillane. But you know, Clare have the problem, you see, of who picks up who. Now, we haven't spoken at all about the 2 times hurler of the year, Cian Lynch, who made a cameo appearance, against Cork, and it suggests to me that Cian Lynch will be fit to play in the Munster final. So, but it's a huge call. We were talking here about the Clare defence and the likelihood of, in the event of Conor Cleary not making it on, and I was suggesting it might be David McInerney at full back with Shane O'Morey coming in the half back line, or as you had suggested, Aidan McCarthy, who started his career as a wing back, going back into the half back line.
Yeah, as Paul Flanagan can come in as well, I suppose, in the corner. I mean, he was an All-Star nominee last year, so and started the championship this year. So look, they have a number of options. I just don't think they have a player that's as equipped as Conor Cleary would be to mark an Aaron Gillane. That's the main point about that. I think they can get guys to cover positions all right. They have a bit more strength and depth, especially in the backs maybe, than they had last year. But in terms of having a man marker on Gillane in the form that he's in at the moment, I think Cleary is obviously is tailor made for him really, but it remains to be seen if he's going to make it. So that would be a big loss in itself. It would be a game changer.
Yeah, it would be a huge loss for Clare if Conor Cleary wasn't to make it. But I just want to go back to your previous point there, Matt, on Cian Lynch, and his role will be important because John Conlon, obviously, it's well known about his man-of-the-match performance in the middle of his brother's wedding, and vice versa. Then Declan Hannon at number 6. That there's an awful lot of similarities in these teams when you look at Conlon and Hannon were both forwards early in their career and rejuvenated themselves at centre back. Both teams, key man is probably centre forward then in Cian Lynch versus Tony Kelly. Like Diarmuid Ryan is the closest thing to Diarmuid Burns you can get, only that Diarmuid doesn't take the frees. I'm sure he's well able at it. And, you know, there's so many similarities around the field that are Clare modelling their game after Limerick a small bit on, or is that just the way things have panned out?
I think it's the style of the game. You know what I mean? Like everyone seems to go for the two-man full forward line. Everyone has a playmaker at centre forward, and everyone has a kind of a sitting centre back. I just think it's the way of the game. Look, we model a lot of things in Limerick, but probably not our hurling team at the moment. But like definitely everyone looks at the team that wins a championship or an All-Ireland or a Munster final and does copy elements of them, because you were trying to look at what was successful and then you're trying to either replicate that or surpass it. And that's the name of the game, I think, always. So I think every team would model themselves on Limerick to an extent, because Limerick have been the outstanding team in the country for the last 5 years at least. So I think there probably is a bit, subconsciously even, a bit of mimicking on it, even in terms of the runners and the amount of fluidity between the players, number of players that can play a number of different positions and kind of drift back into the mix and make that middle third. I mean, there's a lot of similarity to try and make space up front as well. Look, you could point to a lot of things, but then that could be 4 or 5 of the top teams as well.
Yeah, and one thing that struck me in the game in the Gaelic Grounds was Tony Kelly, and I think he got 4 points in play, but he had put up huge numbers against Limerick, and Clare didn't get over the line. That must be a boost for ye that other fellas are stepping up to ease his scoring burden. And something like 4 for Tony is a huge response. And you've Aidan on the frees, and you've Mark Rogers, and you've Dave Fitz and Ryan Taylor coming from deep. You know that it's not a one-man show anymore.
Yeah, but I think that because Tony Kelly was taking the frees before, I think you see the lights out, well, it could be freeze, if you know what I mean. That so it kind of masked that. But like, I mean, 4 or 5 from play is very good for Tony Kelly because he's a playmaker as well. He gets involved in the play. He sets up stuff. He's very, very astute. And it's the one team he likes playing against is Limerick because they don't mark him. Well, they mark him zonally, but they don't have a man marker on him, where he's had trouble with Tipperary and Cork and different teams with terms of man markers that follow him everywhere. And he's trouble to find space because he thrives in space, whereas Limerick afford him, like someone picks him up when he comes into a certain zone, and then others will pick him when he drops off a little bit and keep an eye on him in that regard, but nobody actually man marks him. So he enjoys that. So whether Limerick changed that a little bit, because if you take out the talisman, let's say, then it's a big dent to what Clare do, because he pulls the strings. He not only is the score getter, but he's also a chief architect as well.
Yeah, on that, Matt, would you be happy enough to see Tony Kelly get a good few scores if the other lads are kept quiet? Because it seemed to have worked for Limerick in recent years.
Well, I wouldn't be happy to see anyone getting a good few scores, Jack.
Unless they're wearing green, obviously.
That goes without saying, and that's the point I was making that earlier on there about the return of Aidan McCarthy. It has given Tony Kelly a certain additional latitude that he hadn't heretofore, because he had the responsibility for the frees, and sometimes they didn't go exactly as he would have hoped them to go, so that pressure is off him. And I agree totally with Eoin that Limerick do not man mark Tony Kelly and haven't done so at the past, and some people would say to their cost that they haven't done so. In that he's marked when he comes into an opponent's zone as it is, but no, I wouldn't be happy to see Tony Kelly getting a lot of scores, but it's something that when you're facing Clare that you've got to live with, that Tony Kelly is going to be very, very much among the marksmen. It's simply unavoidable.
You wouldn't begrudge your neighbours a few scores, would you?
No, I'm not. But Jack said a good few scores, you see, on.
Yeah, there's all in the wording there, and while Tony Kelly is obviously the talisman for Clare, Limerick's talisman haven't really got going yet on. And is that a small bit of a worry that, if Gerard Hegarty or Cian Lynch catch fire, like, to be fair, Tom Morrissey in the other wing has been phenomenal, but that if these lads catch fire, again, they're so hard to stop. You saw Gerod's goal in the final last year, for a man of that size to do something like that Clare will have to hope that they keep him quiet, because he has a big game in him ready to come, like.
No doubt about it. I mean, I thought when he was coming on against Clare in the group stage, I thought he was going to come on with a point to prove, having not started the game, but he didn't really seem to get into it. So I'm not sure if he's an impact player off the bench, but definitely, I don't think there's another player like him in the country. Gerard Hegarty at his peak is unstoppable because of his physical size, his ability to get long range points. He can also nip in for a goal. If he was running at you, it's a very dangerous thing. You wouldn't want to be standing in his way either. So, I mean, him in his full strength, Clare would find a real handful. But, we've seen flashes of it so far. We obviously know that he's a quality player. And the same thing goes for Cian Lynch. He's obviously been dogged by injuries in the last couple of years and hasn't really got that flow and momentum that he had when he was player of the year and all that. So I think for him, it's just about getting through a game and consistency. And because he has the talent, there's no doubt about it. It's just that he's maybe kind of minding himself a small bit in terms of the injuries, because trying to get through games at this stage and trying to get that game time and get up to speed with the rest of the championship is difficult when you're stop-start and you're only getting bits of games and it must be very frustrating for him because, you know, he's at the peak of his powers now, and he wants to show that, but just his body is letting him down to a large extent. So definitely two major players for Limerick that Clare will be keen to, maybe if they want to take a rest for Sunday and come back for the All-Ireland series, we'll accept that, but it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen somewhat because, as we said, it's a crucial one to get over the line. Matt, where will the game be won and lost on Sunday? An easy one for you.
It's not an easy one now. It's not an easy one, and I tried to resolve that as late as yesterday when I was looking through sort of what I was anticipating might be 1-15. I think a lot might hinge on what calls in the event of Conor Cleary being out that Brian Lohan would make. As I said earlier on, I think it will be David McInerney reverting to fullback, but I'm not sure of that. Or will Brian Lohan up for the minimum disruption and just go in for a straight replacement at fullback, possibly Adam Hogan moving straight in and Paul Flanagan coming in the corner, possibly. We must remember that Seamus Flanagan had the game of his life in last year's Munster final. And I think it will be decided with how the Clare defence cope with the Limerick attack, because Gearóid Hegarty, on the evidence of what we saw last Sunday week against Cork, was coming back into form. Tom Morrissey is in the form of his life. Seamus Flanagan, Aaron Gillane, and we've yet to see a big game in this competition from Peter Casey. Yeah, and we've spoken about Cian Lynch, and you know, an informed Cian Lynch is certainly, but of course there's going to be a huge battle at midfield. And of course, you know, what impact that will have will depend on the amount of play that would be at midfield. Sometimes, you know, a game tends to pass midfield, but you've David Fitzgerald and Cathal Malone up against two informed Limerick players who were both outstanding against Cork, and Willem O'Donoghue and Darragh O'Donovan. So that could be a crucial area insofar as what midfield play you will have, but it certainly will influence what will happen in the middle third.
Yeah, I think the midfield is going to be crucial, and I think Dave is a phenomenal player. For you, Eoin, any key battles that you think could go a long way in deciding the game?
Yeah, I'd echo Matt on the fact that Conor Cleary, whether he's in or out, is going to be crucial to Clare, because he's the fulcrum of that backline, really. You know, while John Conlon is the defensive kind of anchor there, like the last line is obviously crucial, and that kind of really trustworthy feel that everyone has, that assurance that everyone has that Conor Cleary's at the edge of the square, even though he's marking Aaron Gillane, I think is a big soothing element to Clare's process. So what they do, I mean, Brian Lohan will see Adam Hogan as a kind of mirror of with Adam Hogan of his own self, really. He's kind of a player and that kind of a guy, but he's still a very young guy. It's his first year. So to put him in a Munster final, even though he says he loves the Gaelic Grounds because he won a Harty Cup there and he has no fear there, I think, you know, facing Aaron Gillane in a Munster final, the way Aaron Gillane is Jib has gone on, he's back to his lethal best now. So I think that would be, it's a big call. I think that's going to be the essential call of it. On the other side of it, I think that dynamic, and it isn't just a midfield, it also your Ryan Taylor's come back into that group. Shane O'Donnell drifts in, and the same thing with the Limerick half forward line. They kind of drift in. So that midfield zone is not, I don't know if it's as important as it used to be, because it gets so blurred there with so many bodies on it. It often comes down to small breaks and things like that. Cathal Malone has been more of a holding player for us, which is unusual for him because he's quite an attacking player in his own club. And you see that with, I mean, Will O'Donoghue and Darragh O'Donovan have been phenomenal players there, as that kind of really, really hard-working midfielders there. So, yeah, look, that midfield is important, but I don't know if it's going to be game-changing in terms of the play because of the fact that there's so many bodies around there at the moment. I honest to God, think it comes down to very, very, very thin margins. I mean, the sides have been level, I think, 33 times. I was researching there. The lead has changed hands 25 times over the 3 games, and there's really never been more than a puck of a ball. Okay, the last game maybe, but, you know, the 2 last year in particular, never more than a puck of a ball between them. So this will come down, as I said at the very start, to a mistake, a moment of genius, hopefully a Tony Kelly line ball to win it this time rather than to send it extra time. But, something like that, of that ilk, that Declan Hannon point, to put him ahead before Kelly got it. One of those really wonder scores to finish it out, because this is going to go right down to the wire again. And look, it could go either way. We said this the last time, but between Clare and Limerick, and because they have no fear of each other, essentially, this is a flick of a coin, really.
Yeah, 100%. I suppose we're nearly an hour before Ryan Taylor is really mentioned, and for me, he's a key player with just his speed to get through that Limerick half back line. And if you were to pick a player on, if you could take one Limerick player for Clare before we get into predictions, who would it be and why?
You're going to have to repeat that. Sorry, you got a few gremlins there.
If from a Clare point of view, if you could take a Limerick player to Clare, who would it be?
Oh, if we could transfer one in, sorry, yeah, I would. For me, it would be Gearóid Hegarty, because he's the sort of player that we don't have. Big, strong, mobile. Really like John Conlon when he was in the forward line. Big, strong guy that is a playmaker, but also can take scores. He can take scores from 70 yards. He can punish you. He can punish you by bursting through the centre. I think he's a phenomenal player. Either him or Kyle Hayes, I would have on my team any day of the week. But it'd be interesting to see what Matt says on the other side of it.
Yeah, Matt.
Well, sure. I suppose it's obvious. Who wouldn't want Tony Kelly in their team?
Where does he play, though, if he's with Limerick?
Yeah.
We'd accommodate him. Don't worry.
You'd find the spot. For me, I think Tony Kelly is obviously the answer, but Dave Fitz, I think, has really taken a huge leap over the last 24 months or so. Quite like Gearóid Hegarty, I think, just big, strong, physical men can shoot from out the field or can, break through the tackles and go for scores. And I think if he is in midfield, I think it's a good thing for Limerick, because I would back William O'Donoghue to track him. If he find himself in the forward channels, he would probably, make sure that Kyle and Diarmuid are on the back foot as opposed to the forward foot. So there's so many little tweaks and things that both managers can do. I suppose I don't think we'll see. Can you see any sort of different change from what we've seen so far? Maybe like a Kyle Hayes into the forwards, or I don't know, throwing David way up the field or anything. Can you see it from a Clare side of view on?
Yeah, look, the funny thing is that Dave Fitzgerald is actually he set up a goal in the first game against Waterford there, because he found himself in the full forward line. It's been an interesting position for him. He's probably going to line out at wing forward or centre forward or something along those lines, and he's going to be that fluid player that goes up and down the field. Shane O'Donnell to full forward at some stage. He's been playing out in the wing and he's been doing phenomenal. But him inside, he can be fairly lethal if they were looking to exploit the fact that Sean Finn is gone. He's very, very tricky. He's a player that he probably will never see again in terms of his touch, his ability. He's a very, very elusive player, and is probably one of the greatest players that I've seen anyway in a Clare jersey. So he can play in a number of positions as well. And for him to go to the full forward line, the position of Tony Kelly is always one of those. He starts corner forward. He could go into midfield. He can go, he could go anywhere really. And it's about whether they track him or not is the big question for Limerick. And up the other side, yeah, look, you have your Kyle Hayes, but I think they're more worried about.
The gremlins are at him there, Matt. We'll say you have Cian Lynch, Cathal O'Neill, Peter Casey, Gearóid Hegarty. You probably have Flanagan, Gillane, and Tom Marcy are undroppables, and then you probably have 3 or 4 lads for the other, or you 4 or 5 lads for the 3 spots. Like, who, if everyone is fit, do you think Lynch just comes in for O'Neill and it's Casey, Flanagan, Gillane inside?
Yeah, that's what it would appear to me. Yeah, that's what would happen. That Cathal O'Neill seems to be in and out into the starting 15. We saw him coming in instead of Garrod Hegarty at one stage. It was against Clare, I think, in round 2, and he came in then when Cian Lynch was out. Yeah, I think if Cian Lynch is fit, that I see Cian Lynch starting.
Yeah, I'm the same as you. Oh, we lost you there at the very end, but we got the gist of what you're saying there about just they've options with Shane O'Donnell and the likes of Dave Fitz as well. When we had you on the last time, I don't know how confident you were in Clare winning, but if you were to call the game at the weekend, if you're, I don't know if you're with us for that, Matt. I'll throw it to you first while we get on back online. Winners and losers are on Sunday.
Yeah, I'll give you the same answer that I gave you for the Cork game.
Limerick to win.
If Limerick play up to their potential, and if not, they'll be in trouble.
And Owen, a winner?
Yeah, I think Limerick has.
The one really big one we want, and we're breaking down here, so we'll persevere for a second there with Owen. You're back to us there, I think, maybe. The joys of going live, everybody. Look, we wanted to get the feedback from the people. We'll just go through a few comments there, as we're getting Owen back online there. There was a good few talks there, Matt, about that the decision there on Sean O'Donoghue and Aaron Gillane. But I don't think we'll be worrying about the refs this weekend. A few comments there about diving as well that we might stay clear of. Jordan Dwyer is wondering just about Cian Lynch. You kind of answered that there. You expect him to be fit and starting. David Toomey thinks it'll be a good match between both teams. John Gleeson is gone for a Clare win with Tony Kelly as man the match. We've calls for Tom Morrissey man the match, Aaron Gillane man the match. Who, like, if you were to call man the match, Matt, who would you be plucking for?
Well, I wouldn't even think about it, Jack. I wouldn't even. I want a team performance that'll win the Munster final, and let everything else after that take care of itself. And I'm not dodging the question now, because the man of the match is all about on the day. Yeah. And sometimes and very often we can disagree with the choice of man of the match. But no, I wouldn't. What I want is a Limerick team performance that will be good enough to beat Clare on Sunday.
Yeah,
and let the leading scorers, let all the kudos that are going then, let them take care of themselves. But all I'm focused on is the 15 players that we'll send out, and whatever subs we'll send on, that they'll be good enough to win the hurling match, and let the man of the match take care of itself.
Yeah, as long as it's a man in green, we don't mind. Or if it's a losing player in yellow, that's cool too. All we look like we've a decent connection now. So your prediction for Sunday?
My prediction is we need more Wi-Fi in Clare. Anyway, that's one thing for sure. Yeah, look, as I was saying before, I think Limerick need to replicate last year's performance in order to get over the line. I think there has been little questions about form and stuff like that, but they have improved with every game. And I think you saw that the pack kind of got them a small bit last year in terms of Clare. We're very close to them, Galway, Kilkenny. And I think that's kind of continued this year. So we need to see a special Limerick performance again. I think in terms of experience, they definitely have it all in their favour in terms of home advantage. And obviously going for 5 in a row, they've got over the line. Clare haven't never got over the line. And Brian Lohan even said it himself. He said, of all the have very much the point to prove. And I think a Clare performance, depending on Conor Cleary and all that, I think without Conor Cleary, it would take a phenomenal performance over the line. I think with Conor Cleary, I think Clare could sneak it if Limerick aren't at their very best.
Yeah, I think most people will agree that if Limerick are at their best, and their best is the form of the 3 in a row, that they'll get over the line. But Clare are the best poised team to get the job done. They did it not so long ago. So it's a really interesting game. I suppose last year we probably didn't expect the game we were going to get in Thurles, you probably would have thought Limerick were a bit ahead of them. This year, we're ready for it. Hopefully the weather stays. It's going to be a sellout. There's no fear of that. I imagine it'll be 50-50 in the crowd. It's not going to make a difference. It's a huge game to look forward to.
In Thurles last year, it's that cutthroat at this stage.
Yeah, it's do or die. It's all in the line. It's a huge game. But Owen, you've been so good with your time. I didn't give you a time. No, I never said 20-25 minutes this time around. I just asked, were you in a rush? And you said no. And you've been very good with it. Nearly over an hour there on the clock. You're sneakily siding with Clare without saying it aloud. But I think when you go off camera, you'll be saying there'll be a yellow jersey. It'll be Tony Kelly climbing the steps in Mackie's stand. But I think, Matt, you're in the camp that it'll be fitting for Declan Hannon to lift the Mick Mackey Cup in the stand named after him. So it promised to be a brilliant game. Owen, thank you so much for your time. Hopefully the omens won't be the same, that your second time on the 3-Dart podcast will see Clare lose. But I think whoever comes out on top, fingers crossed there, I think whoever comes out on top this Sunday will be thoroughly deserving it. So we'll cross everything, lads, fingers, toes, whatever you can, and look forward to the game on Sunday. But Owen, a huge thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
Thank you, Owen.
Thanks, guys.
Talk to you soon.
See you Sunday.
Thank you, Owen. See you Sunday. Good luck. Now, Eoin Brennan there give us an hour as we look forward to a mouth-watering clash, Matt. It's going to be a game for the ages, I think, somehow in the TUS Gaelic Grounds on Sunday. You'll be hoping everyone gets their hands...
That's the one thing I'd be worried about, Jack. I'd be slightly worried about it, in that it's going to be, one way or the other, it's going to be benchmarked against last year's, what was a very, very special final. And there'll be disappointment if it doesn't live up to it. But like we had a final for the ages last year, and it will be very, very hard, and like the tension will be such in the Gaelic Grounds because of the concession by Clare of home advantage and all that sort of thing, and it will be bringing extra pressure on Limerick. But look, it's going to be a very, very, very special occasion, Jack, and one that we're really, really looking forward to. Sunday can't come soon enough.
No, definitely looking forward to it. And there is a lot of hype on the game, a lot of expectation, but there's been so much hype coming into every Limerick game this year in the Munster Championship, and they've delivered, and the Tips and the Cork games have delivered, and even Waterford against Tipperary last time. It would be a fitting conclusion to this year's championship if it was a good game. And hopefully, as we said, it's 5 in a row for Limerick. It's Declan Hannon adding to his already impressive resume to be, please God, a 6th Munster title for Graham Mulcahy, for Nicky Quaid, for Declan Hannon and Dave Reedy, if they were to get there. And I don't know if you know the facts, but has any Limerick player won more than 6 Munster titles, Matt?
No, not that I know of. Certainly not, no.
So it would put them... They're already in the annals of Limerick great in terms of hurling, but it would further etch them up there in that regard. I don't think there's any more...
Bob McConkey does have a record of winning All-Ireland medals in 3 decades. 1918, 1921 and 1934. I don't think you were around, Jack. Or were you away that day?
No, I was just thinking of the decades there, but obviously Limerick only are in 2 decades. I can't.
No, but as regards somebody getting six Munster medals, the answer is no.
Yeah, and it would be fitting to match the feat of Teddy McCarthy, although he is 9 overall, so there's still a way to go in that regard. Briefly on Galway-Kilkenny, Matt, because it's hard to get really invested in that game when you have a huge game here. And to be fair, the Leinster Championship has been largely shadowboxing, I think it's fair to say. But would it be as detrimental for the losers in Leinster as it would be for Munster? Or do you think there's plenty of recovery time for them, considering it hasn't been as hectic of a championship?
Yeah, that's a very, very good, valid point, Jack. It hasn't been as hectic, like sort of Galway and Kilkenny have ambled through to the final, actually. And I saw their game in Nolan Park, which ended in a draw. And in terms of intensity and championship intensity, Jack, it totally lacked it. Not saying it was a poor game, but it was a game of you got the sense that, look, both of these teams know there's going to be bigger fish to fry down the road, and we'll just go through the motions for today. But I have a fancy for Galway in it, Jack.
Okay. Because
as we were talking off air, Jack, you will recall where we were talking about the late Teddy McCarthy and Cork doing the double in 1990. I'm of the opinion that, rightly or wrongly, that the county most likely and best placed to do a double anytime in the future is Galway.
Yeah, and I agree with you there. But, Kilkenny are going for 4 in a row as well, Matt. That has completely flown under the radar because they haven't been able to back it up with an All-Ireland success. And to not go too much into the future, because they have a great game this Sunday. Our Final Four last year was Limerick, Galway, Clare, Kilkenny. Do you see anyone upsetting that trend this year from this far out? Obviously, you have Tip and Offaly and Carlow and Dublin.
I would fancy Tip to make it, yeah.
In the place of the loser on Sunday.
In place of the loser on Sunday in Leinster, I'd say, yeah.
Oh, in Leinster. I don't know. I'm not 100% sure how that draw works. But I think if Clare lose, they'll find it very hard to regroup in a quarter-final. Conversely, it will be the same for Limerick. I just think that whoever loses in Galway and Kilkenny will have enough in the tank to get over the line. Now, you don't see an upset. Although, Tipperary, you would imagine, would have too much for Offaly, but Carlow will be confident of causing an upset against Dublin.
Yeah, but Dublin, they look pretty good against Galway. Galway had to pull out the stops, to get a draw on that one. I don't think Dublin are too bad, but what impressed me mostly and for me was memorable in the Joe McDonagh Cup was the aerial prowess of Carlow. They were so good on the air, absolutely so good, without exception. But they were so good, and that's something like you'd see some of the stuff was something you'd more associate with Dermot Burns or Garrod Hegarty than players playing in the McDonagh Cup. And no disrespect to the McDonagh Cup, but it is the second level. And I was impressed by Carlow, but I think Dublin will beat Carlow, and I think Tipperary will beat Offaly.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Tipperary into the Final Four. But I don't know how would.
It's going to be Tip against Kilkenny. It's going to be Tip against Kilkenny or Galway in that scenario, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah. It is. So, actually, I think we might have the same Final Four, but we're not going to look past this Sunday, Matt. I suppose 1:45. I suppose is the time.
The sum total of my concern about the Final Four is that Limerick are one of them.
Yeah, I think, look, if we win on Sunday, we're there. We don't have to worry about prelims or quarterfinals. We can get through to the Final Four. And I think it's different with the round robin having that bit of a break. It's been detrimental to teams before that lengthy break to semi-final. But I think, considering the Munster Championship, I think it's more than just deserved, and welcomed a comment in here from Drina Ross watching in Detroit, Michigan, in the US of A. So, very welcome to the pod, Drina Ross. That Sunday, 1:45 in the TUS Gaelic Grounds. Hopefully, everyone that needs a ticket gets a ticket. It's, the demand will be as high as for an All-Ireland final, and you're going to have half the tickets. So, hopefully, everyone will get sorted in that regard. But there will be people missing out. But John Kiley was quick to just say it'll be as enjoyable at home as it will be there, because it promised to be a great game. Final word on it, Matt. Limerick by how many points?
If they play to their potential, Limerick by about 3.
Yeah, 3 is loads. 1 is loads on Sunday. Really mouth-watering game.
One is plenty. It was enough against Cork.
Yeah, and I suppose the three
And
half
even
extra
two is
time.
plenty was enough against Waterford.
Yeah, we haven't got a 3-point win yet this year. It'd be nice and sweet.
No.
But to be fair to this group of players, it's fifth Munster final. They've 4 All Ireland finals. You know, they've won all 8 of their finals under John Kiley. Hopefully that trend can continue this Sunday. So the best of luck to John Kiley and his men in the Munster final, probably the most eagerly awaited Munster final in a long, long time, this Sunday in the TUS Gaelic Grounds. An hour and 15 of hurling there, Matt. But we have just a few more things to get through before we finish up. The Limerick footballers finished the group stage of their Tailteann Cup on Sunday against Wicklow, I suppose, in disappointing circumstances. You know, was it a 4-point defeat to Wicklow? They were through already, you know, so the result didn't make any difference. But listen to Mark Fitzgerald afterwards. He was disappointed to not get the win, but it seems as though he's kind of hoping that it'll refocus the minds as they wait their quarterfinal opponents.
Yeah, it might be a timely wake-up call, Jack. That was my first reaction to it. But obviously it was disappointing because we'd got into the habit of winning, and, you know, you were facing a team that had absolutely nothing to play for, and but other than pride. And, you know, I think Wicklow were deserving winners on the day from all the reports that I hear. Obviously, Limerick will now, as you said, have to refocus, and it's a timely wake up call, because I think they'll be in action as soon as the weekend after next, won't they? In the quarterfinals.
Yeah, the 10th, I think,
Because
or
the
18th.
preliminary quarters are this weekend, so it's just around the corner.
Yeah, I think it's the 18th. They'll be in a quarterfinal action. They'll be home for that as well, which will be a boost. And you'll be hoping that, as we said, that will just have refocused the minds that, you know, there's a plenty of work to do there. They have the talent to go all the way, but there's plenty of work to do, because, to be fair, the other 3 group winners all won all their games. So, you know, Limerick will come in under the radar again, but that might be no harm for Mark Fitzgerald and his side. So it'll be interesting to see who they get in the quarterfinals. We'll have to wait until the weekend to see that. Also over the weekend with Camogie, the senior Camogie
So
side.
before you go from football, Jack, the Masters, the Limerick Gaelic Masters are at home this weekend. They're playing Laois in Kilteely at 2:00 on Saturday. Now they will be looking to get back to winning ways. They lost the last time out to Kerry, having led Kerry going down the home straight with 10 minutes to go. Very, very creditable performance. I was out at it, but previous to that they had beaten Waterford. So they will be looking to get back on the horse, as it were, next Saturday when Laois visit the Gaelic Grounds. Laois have yet to win this year. In the competition, they've already lost to. They've drawn with Westmeath, and they've lost to Leitrim Longford in the second round. So it's an important game for Limerick, and it's on in Kilteely at 2:00 on Saturday.
2:00 on Saturday. The best of luck there to Anthony McCarthy and his side. Obviously, we're beaten last time out against a strong Kerry team, but they'll be looking to get back to winning ways this weekend. And the Camogie match was disappointing in Antrim. 4-point loss in the end. An early goal kind of just pushed Antrim ahead, and they never relinquished that lead. And try as they might, Limerick got within 2 points a good few occasions, even as late as I think there was maybe 2 or 3 minutes to go, but just couldn't quite claw their way back into the game. And they've Waterford up next. It's just disappointing, the result and the context of the game.
Yeah, the disappointing result, Jack. There were 7 points down at half-time, and it looked bleak, and Antrim further increased the lead immediately after half-time. But then Limerick hit 5 points in a row and really got back into it. And you're right in saying that they closed the gap to 2 points on a couple of occasions, including in the closing minutes at one stage. And you know, they look poised that they just might snatch it, but it didn't happen. But in the context of the group, because it was a very, very disappointing result, because Waterford are absolutely flying this year. They have won Division 1B now. their performance in the Munster Championship was funny, really, because they beat Cork in the first round of the Munster Championship and suffered a very heavy defeat in the semi-final to Tipperary. So, but their Limerick's next game up, and that's on Saturday week at a Limerick venue. So, that's going to be a huge game for Limerick. And Waterford were very big winners over the weekend over Offaly. So, Limerick have left themselves with quite a bit of work to do if they're to make the quarterfinals like they did last year, Jack.
Yeah, and then probably will be relying on other results elsewhere to help them with their goal to get into the quarterfinals. But look, that remains to be seen. Before we finish up, Matt, I have another comment in here from YouTube. And before the Limerick tip game, we said the Clare loss was just a blip. Seeing as Limerick haven't lost a game since that, do you still consider it a blip?
Yeah, well, no, I think I might be slightly misquoted there. What I was saying was, I think I said it in the context of the Waterford game.
It could have been me that said it now as well. I just can't remember.
Yeah, I think I said. I thought I said it in the. Was it just a blip, or was it the start of the signs of wear and tear? They've been on the road for 5 years. I think that's the context in which I used the word blip. I certainly used it in the context of the Waterford game. I'm not sure. Maybe I did use it in the context of the Clare game, but certainly I thought the performance against Clare was much better than that against Waterford.
Yeah, and to be fair, the John Kiely said incremental improvements, and they've really upped their game. The last few games, Tip leveled very late on. Clare only won by a point, and they beat Cork, and I think it was their best performance of the year. And I've gone on record saying I think the Cork were probably the best team Limerick played so far this year, but I would definitely left with a leg on my face if I say that, and Clare beat them twice in the one season. But an hour and 21, Matt.
But before we go, Jack,
before
we go, I would just like to make a point to. First of all, I'd like to congratulate Saoirse Bulfin, who was manager and guided Meath to win the Christy Ring Cup with a victory over Derry. Like Saoirse, a native of Bruff, has been involved in the GA in Limerick for so many years, and of course for many years he would certainly know the Clare scenario very, very well, as he was part of David Fitzgerald's backroom team for a number of years, both in Clare and in Wexford. And this year he took the plunge himself out to being a manager, and we see that Saoirse did a very, very successful job in helping in guiding Meath to win the Joe McDonagh Cup. I would also like to mention Ger Hickey of Crocora Manister, who's very, very much involved in Limerick GAs and is presently the coach of Drummonaclacha and has been involved deeply with Limerick Camogie in the past. A native of Broadford, Clare. He was a selector and coach on the Clare minor team that won the All-Ireland last Sunday. So congratulations to Ger Hickey. And I suppose commiserations to our good friend who has appeared with us in this podcast, Leo O'Connor, on guiding, first of all, guiding Offaly to Leinster final success and into the All-Ireland final. And with a very, very young team, he guided Offaly to the threshold of All-Ireland minor glory last year, and he had promoted 6 of that minor team that started against Cork on Sunday. And commiserations to Leo, and I have no doubt that his Offaly project, his day will come very, very, very shortly. Yeah,
another step in the right direction for Leo and the Offaly hurlers and to Saoirse and Hickey as well. Good to see Limerick men making their mark with other counties, and hopefully one Limerick man, John Kiely, will continue to make his incredible mark on the county this Sunday as he bids for a 5th title as manager. He was also part of that team in '96 to get over the line against Clare, and also was there in 2013 against Cork. So he's a lot of experience of Munster finals and big Munster days in the TUS Gaelic Grounds. So hopefully for another one, we started this potential run for 5 in a row in the Gaelic Grounds against Tip in 2019. It would be fitting if we ended it. Well, not ended it, kept it going, got to 5 on Sunday afternoon. So hopefully at around 3:30 on Sunday afternoon, there'll be a man from Adair in the Mackie stand with the Mackie Cup. But we'll have to wait with bated breath for that.
Can I correct you, Jack? Can I correct you? John Kiley's 6th as a manager. One under 21.
Oh yeah. True. Yeah, look, there's so many accolades you could bestow on John Kiley that there's bound to be a few that get lost in the myriad of them. But as always, a huge thank you to Eoin, first of all, for giving us so much of his time, over an hour. In fairness to him, he was reffing games this morning, so he understood the pressure of what it was like to be the man in the middle with the whistle. But very good to give us his time. To everyone watching, commenting, liking, subscribing, all that good stuff. If you are on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. It helps the algorithm. Like and follow on Facebook, and like and retweet on Twitter. It's really appreciated. A huge thank you to everyone who just gets involved every week. To you, as always, Matt, for your indelible contribution and insight and knowledge, and to Noel's Menswear for coming on board and sponsoring the pod. Hopefully next week it will be a very enjoyable podcast. There is one thing that is sure to take the headlines next week. It will be the Munster final in the TUS Gaelic Grounds. And please God, it'll be a podcast full of green mist and celebrations, as we've gotten so used to on this medium. But for now, that's it. Nearly an hour and a half on the board, a bumper episode for the Munster final. A huge thank you to everyone that got involved, and we'll be back soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
The impression again we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomás O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 𝘔𝘬𝘦𝘯𝘴 leading the charge of the Light Brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game.